Driving to the end zone, into the hands of Dante Pettis. Huskies strike first.
Scarborough up the middle, he breaks a tackle. Touchdown, Alabama! Bama with pressure, there's an interception.
The defense rolls again.
That's what the Tide does right there.
Look at Bo go.
68 yards, Scarborough in, touchdown, Alabama!
Alabama's going to be playing for the national championship. Nick Saban is going to have a chance at history.
And it's been a long road to the national championship game, and yet it's the same two teams. Alabama and Clemson will fight it out in Tampa with Dusty Dvorak and Mike Bellotti. I'm Brendan Fitzgerald. We focus in on the road to the national championship game with the Alabama Crimson Tide. And let's start with the surprising news that they'll have a new offensive coordinator for the most important game of the year, Lane Kiffin taking over as head coach of Florida Atlantic, and now it's Steve Sarkisian running the offense. How surprised were you by this move by Alabama?
I'm very surprised, and I say that because Nick Saban, I think, first and foremost, wants to win, and this sets them back a little bit. I think that you have a very able replacement in Steve Sarkisian for Lane Kiffin, but I think at some point, the ultimate control freak, which Nick Saban is, and I say that in a positive manner because I love the way his team plays. I love the fact that they're not demonstrative out on the field. They just love to make plays and win games. For him to do this at this point means that something, the dam overflowed, the dike finally broke. I think they just said, hey, this is not working for us at this point. And so Kiffin walks away and Sarkisian steps in. That's going to change things for sure in terms of the dynamics of the quarterback position and the play calling.
Your reaction?
Nick Saban always wants to alleviate distraction. Well, he just gave his team a distraction. The only thing that I can come up with is the temperature in the room was too hot. This became a tenuous situation between Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin. We've seen the sideline demeanor between the two. Just a week ago, Lane Kiffin missed the bus to a practice. So I think there's a part of it that Lane Kiffin, trying to wear two hats as the offensive coordinator of Alabama, the new Florida Atlantic football coach. But I think more than anything, it was about the relationship between Nick Saban, between Lane Kiffin. It wasn't going well, and I'm shocked because for a guy that tries to alleviate all distractions and on a championship game week to get ready for your offensive coordinator, not that Steve Sarkisian can't do a good job, but he hasn't called plays in quite some time. He hasn't called any plays with this Alabama football team. So his first time calling plays with a true freshman quarterback in Jalen Hurts, it's going to be in the national championship against Clemson?
Except that Nick Saban, just as you just said, he must know in his heart, he must feel very good about Steve Sarkisian, say he can step in and do this. And I believe he can. He's done it before. He is a consummate coach in that regard. He's been offensive coordinator, been a head coach. He understands play calling, and his personality may be a little bit more able to handle Nick Saban. I think Kiffin, it wasn't a match made in heaven, those two on the sideline together.
There's been a lot made of their relationship, Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin. What about the relationship between Lane Kiffin and his players, Dusty, and how that sort of changes things, that they'll take orders from a different guy?
Well, it'll be different. I mean, clearly, I did this. We played the national championship game in 2003. Mike Stoops then was our defensive coordinator. He left for Arizona. Brent Venables, oh, by the way, the defensive coordinator for Clemson, stepped in. And we had a good rapport with him, so that didn't change anything. We got beaten that game against LSU, Nick Saban's first national title, but it was because we weren't good enough as players. I don't think it had much to do as far as who was calling the defensive plays. Now, offensively, with the quarterback, and Coach Bellotti can speak more to this, a quarterback that needs that voice in his ear, especially a true freshman against this defense, it could have an effect with communication and also getting this offense, getting this quarterback into a flow early and often.
I assume that Sarkisian has been sitting in on the meetings or has been part of that process, whether it's been breaking down film, making suggestions to Lane Kiffin about play calling, that type. He must have been involved to a degree that they feel comfortable saying he can be the quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator going forward. And he understands football, and I think actually he will run a style of offense. It'll be more simpatico with Nick Saban and what he really wants to do. Lane Kiffin was a little farther out there than Steve Sarkisian was in terms of the base core of what they used to do at SC, which I see being more like what Alabama wants to do.
You can call it many different things, surprising, interesting timing, but you can't call Nick Saban wrong very often. Ryan McGee with more.
Okay, so Bama won. Surprised? Of course you aren't. They were the #1 team. They've been the #1 team since they became the #1 team nearly 1 year ago. Now they are back in that game. And now it's time to start thinking about another question that involves being #1. If, and it is still an if, no matter what those folks dressed in houndstooth might try to tell you, if the Tide continues to roll, where will they rank when it comes to being #1 of all time? No, not this specific team, the current era of the program. Let's do some long addition. This team, added to last year's team, added to the playoff team in 2014, added to the national championship squads of 2012, 2011, and 2009, plus 5 SEC titles, plus 8 BCS/New Year's Six bowl appearances, plus they've won more than 100 more games than they've lost under Saban. Plus, we're doing all this math all within the framework of only 1 decade, only 10 seasons worth of work. You see where I'm going here, right? Just in case, hey, you folks I was just talking about, the ones wearing the fedoras, you might want to sit down for this next part. Saban, he's totally better than the Bear. Whew, okay, there, I said it. Search your feelings, Bammers. You know it to be true. Even if you don't agree with me now, you know you'll have to if your team does what you keep telling me is inevitable. When St. Nick wins his 5th title with the Tide. Now, will they sell oil paintings of Saban to hang over the family fireplace like they do of Bear? Probably not. Will they stop putting pennies on Bryant's grave and quit singing happy birthday to his headstone like they do now? Probably not. But no matter how much you like football, that's weird. But if, and again, it's still an if, Saban can process another championship, then Bama fans, you can save the hero worship for the name on your stadium. But the real hero will be the guy who's still working in that stadium.
Alabama has matched a school record with 14 wins this season. Now looks to become the first major college team to finish 15-0 or better since Pennsylvania back in 1897. Here's the national championship tally. Bear Bryant had 6 fedoras there, and Nick Saban already has 5 in his time at Alabama and LSU. And of course, he's looking for 6. On Twitter, it's at ESPN McGee if you have a problem with what he just said there. But it's tough. He trolled Alabama fans by saying this Alabama coach is better than this Alabama coach.
It's still Alabama. What's the matter? They should be happy.
They're good coaches, and it's certainly a solid program. Let's talk about the matchup with Clemson. Do we know what to expect because of what we saw last year, or do you expect something different? Where do you jump off on this game?
Clemson has staying power now. And Dabo Swinney, and I say that Alabama's got staying power. They're in it every year. But Clemson's back again this year, and the performance that they had in my mind last year, taking Alabama to the final minute of the game, actually having a chance to win that football game, changed my impression of Clemson football. Now, they did a good job early of destroying that idea because they didn't play very well. They turned the ball over way too much. But the reality is they've hit a stride now. They have the best quarterback, best set of receivers, the best offense in this game. Is their defense good enough? And I'm going to say I think it might be. And I think they'll be able to tackle Bo Scarborough a lot better than Washington.
What I can't wait to see is this Alabama defense get their revenge on Deshaun Watson, this Clemson offense. They put up 40 points and 550 yards. It's a prideful group now. And as I watch them on tape,
revenge. It's a defensive guy talking about
sure
that.
is.
It's one of the best defenses I've watched on tape. And so now they get a chance to make a new, to have another opportunity at this offense, at a guy that Nick Saban said is the best player in college football since Cameron Newton. So I got to imagine they're frothing at the mouth at the opportunity to take on this Clemson offense. On the other side, my old defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, he's got the Clemson Tigers humming. But what they did against Urban Meyer and that Ohio State offense, I think it really sets up to give Jalen Hurts and this Alabama offense some serious trouble. And I can't wait to watch these matches, but especially the Alabama defense taking on Deshaun Watson and that Clemson offense.
Deshaun Watson ran the football very well in the big games. He ran it well last game. And it's amazing his comfort zone, reading blocks and setting up blocks. And that's the one thing I thought last year. I was afraid of him playing against the Alabama defense. I thought they might destroy him. They did not. He was able to protect himself, protect the football, and that's why I think that Clemson actually has a chance this year.
Coach, let's go X's and O's in the film room. What matchup are you looking at?
Well, it's got to be, in my mind, the linebackers, the inside linebackers for Alabama, those guys, Foster and Evans, against Deshaun Watson in the run game, the quarterback run game, because I think that's going to keep the defense honest and allow Clemson, if they can hold their own in that aspect, to be able to throw the ball when they want.
I'm looking at the Alabama front, this defensive front, and can they contain Deshaun Watson? I went back and watched last year's championship. So many times on third down, when they've got Deshaun Watson bottled up, they let him out the back door. They didn't keep contained. And now, whether he just takes off and runs it, utilizing his legs, or he keeps his eyes down the field and he finds his targets down the football field, he shredded the Alabama defense by breaking contain, getting outside the pocket. And when you look at these pass rushers with Anderson, with Williams, Jared Allen, even Jonathan Allen, even the way that they bring Reuben Foster on blitzes, they've got to find a way, whether it's a spy some way, shape, or form, they've got to contain Deshaun Watson on third down situations and not allow him to get outside the pocket and extend drives.
I'll go one other step. I would take, say, Mike Williams against the corners, because Clemson has so many weapons offensively, Leggett, the tight end, some guys that you have to cover everybody. So you're going to get one-on-one matchups at some point. And I think the weakness of the Alabama defense is their cornerback position. Without the rush, if they can hold off the rush, they can pick on those corners.
Let's switch to the Alabama offense, and we'll have more on Jalen Hurts coming up later in the show. But Bo Scarborough, he had a coming-out party the way O.J. Howard did last year in the national championship game. What stood out from his performance against Washington?
His ability to break tackles, run through arm tackles, 120 yards after contact for Bo Scarborough. He broke this game wide open. Washington was unable to take him to the ground. Big physical back. I thought it was Derrick Henry back there for a little bit, and shows great ability to stay on his feet, and then he's got great speeds for a guy his size. So I thought their ability, and really on the left side, running behind the All-American Cam Robinson, I thought that's when they really made hay, and that's when you saw some of the bigger runs. But it was the physical running nature of Bo Scarborough and Washington's inability to stop him. Clemson, they better strap it up, and they better tackle well against this Alabama running backs.
I believe that they will. I think the Clemson's front, we talked about Watkins or Wilkins or wherever they've got in there, has grown. They're a young team, but they're actually pretty good up front, and I think they have the physicality to match that. Now, any running back that plays for Alabama is eventually going to wear somebody down, because the offensive line is big, physical, all that. I'm not sure they block as well across the board as they have in the past, but the reality is I think Clemson will do a better job of tackling a back like Scarborough than Washington did.
Sets up to be a great game down in Tampa, the rematch between Clemson and Alabama. Predictions from these two coming up later, but up next, we talk about the quarterback of the Crimson Tide, Jalen Hurts. His teammates use one word to describe him: different. We'll tell you why next.
All we thought about was, wow, Nick Saban's playing a true freshman quarterback.
Jalen Hurts rolls right, turns it upfield. He walks it in.
Jalen Hurts is getting better, finding targets in the passing game.
Hurts fires.
Money touchdown, Alabama.
It's time to start showing Jalen Hurts some love in the Heisman Trophy race. He's done more for any team, just about anybody in America.
Road to the College Football Playoff National Championship is brought to you by One-A-Day Men's and Women's.
In some ways, Jalen Hurts is a lot like Alabama quarterbacks that have preceded him. A first-year starter that has the Tide playing for a national championship, and arguably the country's best defense to help out on the other side of the ball. But in more ways, he's very different than any starting quarterback Nick Saban has ever had. Marty Smith has more.
Some are different. Chosen, maybe.
Jalen Hurts showing what he can do.
He's just different from any other kid that's at his age.
How relaxed and just calm he is in the most hostile environment you can play in. It's pretty amazing.
Touchdown, Jalen Hurts. Tremendous poise in the pocket.
Jalen Hurts is an 18-year-old anomaly, the first freshman quarterback to ever start for Nick Saban.
He's given us the best opportunity to be successful on offense. It just was a perfect storm, and he took advantage of it.
Jalen Hurts couldn't help but consume the game. Growing up in Houston, he tagged along with his father, longtime Texas high school football coach, Averion Hurts.
Jalen was a little kid that he'd come out and do the same workout that the older kids did. He'd try, and he'd be right there most of the time. We saw it then that he was going to do something special.
Jalen played for his father for 4 years. As a senior, father and son led Channelview High School to its first playoff appearance in 22 years. The field provided a great classroom, but the most impactful lessons were relayed on the 10-mile ride home in Avrion's red truck.
Driving home from practice after watching some film and Big Red, it was all good. We talked football, but once we stepped in that garage, let the garage up, it all came to an end.
We'd talk, and we might sit in the driveway for a minute, but we'd leave it in the truck. So now I'm just dad.
Those experiences were, experiences I'll never forget in life.
Last January, 17-year-old Jalen Hurts and his father drove the Big Red truck from Texas to Tuscaloosa. College, the next chapter. On his first day of practice, Jalen was asked to play Deshaun Watson on the scout team as the Tide prepared to play Clemson for the 2016 National Championship.
He's coming in as a freshman. He's going against our #1 defense as a scout team quarterback. Everyone's trying to hit him hard, because he's running. We knew then that he was a competitor.
I watched the first practice, and I realized then that I could drive back to Houston, and he would be okay.
Hurts fires! Money, touchdown! By season's end, he was the first true freshman to win SEC Offensive Player of the Year since Herschel Walker in 1980. As Jalen Hurts prepares for the biggest game of his life, he carries with him the lifelong lessons instilled in him by his father.
I am my father's child. People talk about how poised and how relaxed I am on the field, but I think all that comes from him.
For an 18-year-old kid to have all of the attention that he's getting, how he's dealing with everything is what's most impressive. I think that he's built for this.
Jalen Hurts has been responsible for 34 touchdowns this season, one shy of the Alabama single-season record. That's held by Blake Sims back in 2014 when the Tide went to the college football playoff, lost to Ohio State. A.J. McCarron is also on this list, but Jalen Hurts has already passed that, a national championship winner for Alabama. So let's talk more about this quarterback, and he wasn't even starter for the start of the season. He came in against USC, never looked back. What have you noticed from Jalen Hurts this season?
Well, he's playing in an offense that hopefully had his skill set right, meaning that he could run the football, he could throw. He's got a strong arm. He's still learning in the passing game. That's obvious. I give some credit to Washington in that game. I think they confused him a little bit. I think they took some things away from him. And that basically, he is most dangerous when he can run the ball, when he pulls it down, I think in a pass situation, and takes off, because literally he is a running back, a quarterback with a running back's body. He can run, he can do it. He has the strong arm, but his understanding of the pass game, I think, still is lacking.
He's physical. He's got a big body. He can run between the tackles. He can get to the perimeter. That's where he can really hurt you. One thing that I noticed, he needs to do a better job keeping his eyes down the field. When the rush comes, I feel like sometimes he'll put it underneath his arm and he'll just look to run the football. Remember, those guys can still catch the ball down the football field, so keep your eyes down the field. And the receivers have to help him, too. They've got to work the scramble drill. They've got to work to get open and continue to know that their routes are still going when the play is going on. It was a conservative game plan. They took the lead. In the second quarter, the Alabama defense took over with forcing 2 turnovers, one of them a pick 6. So I thought that they kept it very conservative, very vanilla. They only asked him to throw the football 14 times. But against this Clemson defense and knowing what Deshaun Watson are going to do, Steve Sarkisian, they're going to have to ask for more out of their quarterback, Jalen Hurts.
His first 2 throws, I think, scared everybody. One was almost intercepted, one was overthrown. And the reality is, I thought they asked him to do too much in the running. There was too many quarterback, a little bit too much trickeration. Just run the football. I thought to myself, Alabama can just run the football, and obviously they did that eventually in the second half with a guy like Bo Scarborough that can break things down. You don't need your quarterback to play well. That's one of the things, the nice things about an Alabama quarterback is the defense is going to get you the ball back many, many times. You're going to have many opportunities. Do not turn the ball over. Do not make mistakes.
And as Dusty said, it'll be interesting to see how the change in coaching situation for Jalen Hurts in this national championship game. Still to come, one more left for Alabama to get the 5th national championship in the last 8 seasons. Predictions for their matchup against Clemson next. Here's a look at the matchup by the numbers. Clemson 13-1 this season. They entered the 14-0 team last year, and Alabama had the loss on the slate. This time it's Alabama going for the perfect 15-0 mark. Each team scores about 40 points per game, allows under 20 yards per game. The edge goes to Clemson on that front. With Dusty and Coach Bellotti. Dusty, I'll give you a final thought here before we get to predictions.
Well, before the season, I picked Clemson to win the national championship.
Okay.
Then I watched the entire season, and I saw Alabama be the best team in the country from day number one against USC all season long, and especially defensively. Now, I feel like now Jalen Hurts had some struggles in the first game against Washington. Everybody's jumping off the Tide bandwagon. I know this much. I played against Nick Saban in a national championship. He beat me. He's beaten everybody he's played. He's 5-0. They're going to make it 6-0. It's the best defense I've watched on tape. Defense wins championships. It's going to be enough. Alabama wins another one.
Alabama's the best team. Nick Saban's the best coach. However, Clemson has the best quarterback. The quarterback situated with Jalen Hurts and a new offensive coordinator. What does that mean? I don't know. But Clemson has proven they could play with them last year, take them to the end. I think Clemson finds a way to get it done because I trust Deshaun Watson and Dabo Swinney.
This is the Alabama show, you know.
I know.
The offensive guy says Clemson. The defensive guy says Alabama. Should be a great one in Tampa between the Crimson Tide and the Tigers. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the game.